Hey there, it's Ask Alyssa Anything Wednesday, aka AAA Wednesday. So welcome to this session where I'm answering your questions about book publishing, querying literary agents, and strengthening your story. If you're new to my channel and you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button to join this amazing community. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that like button right below to help with the YouTube algorithm. Before we dive into the questions today, I also wanted to let you know about my free resource in the description below. This is a worksheet I designed specifically for my YouTube community. If you have a current work in progress, it's going to help you pinpoint the strengths and weaknesses in your story and how to take it to the next level, which can be really helpful whether you are working toward traditional publishing or self-publishing. That is also going to sign you up for my exclusive newsletter with tips and insights that you won't find anywhere on my channel, so don't miss out on that. Thanks so much to everyone who submitted a question. We have some great ones on deck today, so let's go ahead and dive in. First question here. I used to adapt novels into scripts, and it was quite common for producers who expressed interest in the finished screenplays to ask for rewrites, free rewrites. I'm now writing novels, and I recently had a publisher express interest in a novel I was writing, but they also wanted some rewriting done. I passed on their request because another publisher agreed to publish the work as is, but how common is it for publishers or agents to ask for rewrites according to their set of notes? It's extremely prevalent in the film business, and I got to the point where I refused to do any rewriting unless I was paid for it, as I found people with no skin in the game lack the motivation needed to take a film from development to production. However, is it common for publishers to ask for substantial rewrites? No skin off their nose, I suppose. If they don't like the rewrites, they can just pass on the project, but the writer now has a reworked novel that might be far from the original work. I really appreciate this question because we haven't talked a ton about rewrites when it comes to traditional publishing so far on my channel, so it's great that I can use this as an opportunity to do so. I'm going to frame my answer in the context of how revisions work when you are traditionally publishing your book via a literary agent. I am not so familiar with other publishing companies, or what we call hybrid publishing companies, where they're operating in a different capacity or you're paying for their services. So I can't speak to requested rewrites when it comes to that scenario. However, with a traditional publisher or any publisher that is paying you in advance for the rights to publish your book, it is very likely, almost a guarantee pretty much, that you are going to go through revisions. So the revisions can and will emerge in various ways and at various times along your publishing journey. The first is during the querying process. So say you have a draft and you are reaching out to literary agents. A literary agent comes back and says, I liked the sample pages, I want to see the full manuscript. You send them the full manuscript. A possible response you can get from the literary agent at that point is what we call a revise and resubmit. This is where the literary agent is going to send you their notes and say, I loved your book, however, the ending didn't quite work for me. If you were to change the story and do XYZ with the ending instead, I might consider giving you an offer of representation, so feel free to reach back out. This is a case where if that feedback makes sense to you, you can make those changes to the manuscript and then reach out to the agent again. And if they liked what you did, then you will sign an offer of representation with the agent. The reason they're not going to give you an offer up front when they want to see those changes made is because they feel strongly enough that they would not be able to sell the book in its current condition, and they would really need the story to have those edits to feel confident presenting the manuscript to a publisher. So that's why they want to make sure you're amenable to those changes and that those changes are executed really well before agreeing to sign an offer of representation with you. So from your perspective, what do you do if you're hit with this revise and resubmit request? You don't necessarily have to move forward with it. If the feedback the agent is giving you does not resonate with you, I do not recommend doing the revise and resubmit with them just to get a literary agent. That's not a good way to start your relationship off, especially if you are making changes that don't feel good to you. However, I would encourage you to highly consider them. Remember that the agent is the publishing professional. They know what works in the market. They know what readers and publishers are looking for, so their feedback should be taken pretty seriously. At the same time, publishing is an extremely subjective business. So a suggestion that one agent might give you might not align with another suggestion from another agent. So that's why it all comes down to editorial matching. If that agent seems like a great fit for you, you actually agree with their feedback, then absolutely, you should go back to the draft, make those changes, and resubmit the manuscript to them. I have heard of many, many authors getting their literary agent that way, actually. And then the benefit is you now have a much stronger story and can probably go on submission to editors at publishing houses quicker because you've already done the heavy lifting. That's just one scenario in which you will do revisions in traditional publishing. The second scenario is if you sign with an agent, but you actually didn't do any revisions to get the literary agent prior to signing the offer of representation. You're still likely going to do revisions once they sign with you before the manuscript goes to editors at publishing houses. That is because, similar to querying, an agent only has one shot, really, to send your manuscript to publishers and get their interest. So they want to make sure it's in tip-top shape. It's as strong as it can possibly be. And while maybe they didn't have such substantial notes that would have prevented them from offering you representation to begin with, they probably have some notes for you, and there's probably some things that they would like to see you change in the manuscript before you go on submission to editors at publishing houses. So you really should be prepared to go through that revision process with your literary agent. This is also something you can and should absolutely discuss with any literary agent who has said that they are interested in offering you representation. Just ask them point blank, what kinds of revisions do you see we need to work on together before I go on submission to editors at publishing houses? That's gonna give you a great sense of their editorial vision for the book, and you can make sure that that editorial vision aligns, which is so, so important. Now, once a publisher takes on your manuscript and decides to give you a book deal, it is understood that you are going to go through some more revisions with the editor at the publishing house. Typically, you will go through at least one round of developmental editing with that editor, and then you're also going to go through at least one round of copy editing and proofreading as well. So if you are looking to go down the traditional publishing path, you should definitely be prepared and you should expect to go through a lot of revisions. The key here is to find an agent and an editor who you really trust and whose insights you feel strengthen the story. If an agent or an editor is really not meshing with your vision for the story, you probably shouldn't work with them. But when you do find those right editorial matches, it can really be like magic, and you guys are going to create such a stronger story and bring it into the world, and you're going to feel like all those revisions really brought it to another level. Here's another question. When do I know when to shelve a manuscript that just isn't working? Ooh, this can be really tough to determine, and it can even have some heartbreak attached to it too. I mean, after all, you've been invested in this story for so long, and you want to see it out in the world. You want to see it successfully published. But when do you let it go? It's something that happens far more often than we talk about. I'm gonna frame my answer depending on where you are in the publishing journey. So if you are currently in the phase of drafting a manuscript and you don't yet have a literary agent, perhaps you're in the situation where a manuscript has been rejected by many literary agents and you just don't know what's wrong with it and you don't know if you should give up trying or work on something else. This can be really tricky to navigate. I think it's really important for you to get another set of eyes on it if you do still believe in the project. Ideally, this would be someone with an editorial background. It could be a creative writing partner or a critique partner that you have, or it could be a professional editor. See if there are any glaring, huge issues that they point out that could be the reason why literary agents are not expressing interest in your manuscript. It could be the case that you can revisit that manuscript, revamp it if you feel inclined to do so, and then query more literary agents and see if that changes the responses that you're getting. Another option, if you're just not willing to make that investment in the manuscript, is to work on something else entirely. Remember, you can always go back to old projects. By the way, published novelists do it all the time, revisiting stuff they've written years ago and revamping it. Sometimes you actually need that time away from the manuscript to come back to it with fresh eyes and revitalize your energy for it. Another situation you might find yourself in is if you are working with a literary agent and then they have sent out the manuscript to publishers, but no one has made you a book deal offer. This can be, frankly, really disheartening. It can be sad, it can be disappointing for you. And I encourage you in this situation to just have a frank, open conversation with your agent because they know the market better than you know it. They know what feedback they got from the editors about your book, and they'll be able to give you more guidance on if it is time to let it go, if it's time to work on something else, or if it is time to revisit the manuscript and try to do some more revisions to get it to the level of getting a book deal. At the end of the day though, if you are deep in a story, deep in a manuscript, and you're just not finding the joy in it anymore, you're struggling to find the energy to continue on with trying to publish this book, it is always okay to take a break and work on something else. It's always going to be there, and as long as it isn't published in some way, there's always the possibility to publish it in the future. So don't think of it as you're giving up on this book. Just think of it as you are setting it aside for later. That's all we had time for today. If you have a question for me, leave it here in the comments. This is the cue I use when I'm answering them, and I'd love to hear what's on your mind. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and grab that free resource waiting for you in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.